I wish upper management could be answering these questions because I'm tired of answering them.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. And today's Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is also brought to you by SeatGeek. Download the mobile app for the easiest way to buy tickets and then use the promo code LOFANTASY to get yourself a $20 rebate off your first purchase. Today's show is also brought to you by our Patreon sponsor, and that is Jason Elson. So, Jason, congrats. I believe that you are a Northwestern fan, and I believe that it's been a while since, not been a while, it's been forever since Northwestern has made it into the NCAA tournament. That is literally all I know about the NCAA tournament, so congrats to Jason, and thank you for being a Patreon sponsor. My name is Josh Lloyd, and as always, you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball, so I suggest you go and follow me there, and do the same over on Instagram, where Jacob is putting up some great Instagram content, so go across there if you have an Instagram account. Go and follow us there, interact with the pages, like them, and follow up with the sort of stuff that Jacob is putting up there. He's doing a great job. Over on Instagram, we've got stuff to talk about, of course we do, because the NBA was on. We've got Sunday's games to get through. We've got Monday's games to preview. We've got a week to look ahead, which for some people is the start of their fantasy playoffs. Way too late. If this is the start of your fantasy playoffs next week, it's too late. You need to change it. You are too late, unless you're having 1 week playoffs that only run for 2 weeks. You are too late, but it is happening. I know that this is the first week of fantasy playoffs for some people, so we're going to talk about the week ahead, and that's it. Let's get stuck into it.
Let's get to it.
That's the Aussie version of let's get to it. Before we get into all of that, though, it is time to announce the winner of the review contest, the winner who will win an NBA jersey and also a rest of the season subscription to Basketball Monster, and that winner is Tom Wills. So Tom, you are the winner of the contest. You were review number 750. Tom is somewhere in Australia. I don't know whereabouts Tom is, but he is somewhere in Australia. He did send me his screenshot of his review, and he did come in as the 750th person to write a review for this podcast. Don't let this stop you writing a review for the show, though, because the contest is done. Feel free to keep doing it. We're still seeing plenty of them pour in, which is awesome, and I do really appreciate seeing the feedback, and it helps get the show out there. Tom's review was very straightforward. A grade NBA fantasy talk, 100 emoji, the best fantasy podcast, A grade fantasy content. Doesn't get much simpler than that. Thank you, Tom, and I will be in contact with you to work out all the details of your prize. So congrats for support. Well, first of all, thank you for supporting the show and leaving a review, and congrats for winning the contest. I'll occasionally do these sort of contests, so always be on the listen out for them. All right, let's get into. Well, let's start talking about what we've got coming up for this upcoming week, and it's an interesting week, obviously, with playoffs either fully in the swing of things, or some people are just ready to begin them. We are in week 21 of NBA action. There's not much to go, about a month left in the NBA season. We've got a very, very spread out week, which is brilliant, because we're not going to be leaving active players on our bench. We're not going to have situations where our additions to our roster don't work because we can't play them. We have got games this week. Let's go through them. On Monday, we've got 8 games. On Tuesday, we've got 5. Wednesday, we've got 10. So Wednesday, 10 games. You may or may not be able to activate someone or stream someone on that day. Every other day, sure. Thursday, 6. Friday, 8. Saturday, 8. Sunday, 8. That's how it should be every single day. 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. Now that sounded probably pretty weird coming through your headphones into your ears. But that's how I think it should be. It's never going to be that way. But for now, we've got a really good week this week. So obviously, we're looking at streaming on 6 of the 7 days. So when we talk about the daily schedule for teams, there's not going to be, this team's got a great schedule because they've got pseudo back-to-backs. Like, you're looking at real back-to-backs here, and really just attacking the categories you need. There's no point in tweeting me, do I add, let's say, I'm in a 10-team league, do I add Patrick Beverley or Billy Hernan-Gomez? The answer is that's going to be, I've got no idea. Because it's going to be strictly dependent on What stats do you need? What point of the week are we at? Where are you? Do you need what Beverly brings? Do you need what Hernan Gomez brings? Do you need with what whoever brings? And that's exactly how you should be looking at everything. Pretty much any question I get that asks me, do I drop point guard and add center? The question's going to be, the answer's going to be, it's up to you, man. It depends on your team. There's never a straightforward answer. Now, if it's do I have this point guard or this point guard, it can get a little bit easier. But again, that all does come down to how many games they got left this week. Can you add them with minimal transactions and get multiple performances out of them? Can you do they have back-to-backs coming up? All that sort of stuff. It generally will take a front seat to the actual level of play, because you can squeeze more out of those sort of things than you can over performances, which we can look at average performances, which is what we do when we're doing projections and all that sort of stuff. But on a one-game sample size, they're not going to hit their average every game. It's going to be up and down, so you want to give yourself the best chance of achieving those results. Let's talk weekly lineups and look at what teams play what games. New York Knicks, it's going to be hard to start any of the Knicks players, even including because they play 2 games. So Melo is out. Obviously, Derrick Rose is out. Hernan Gomez is out. If you're in a weekly league, I had to sit Porzingis in a weekly lock league that I'm in because he's only got 2 games. The majority of teams this week play 4. We've got 17 teams playing 4. Brooklyn, Chicago, Cleveland, Dallas, Detroit, the Clippers, the Lakers, Memphis, Milwaukee, Minnesota, the Pelicans, the Blazers, the Kings, the Spurs, the Raptors, the Jazz, and the Wizards. And the rest all play 3. Hawks, Celtics, Hornets, Nuggets, Warriors, Rockets, Pacers, Heat, Thunder, Magic, Sixers, and Suns. So the majority of teams playing 4. When the majority of teams are playing 4 and you've got a team that plays 2, the team that plays 2, it's going to be real tough to use those Knicks guys. And in nearly every case, outside of a few weird, maybe deeper league sort of examples, that Porzingis and Melo and guys that are trending up, Courtney Lee, Derrick Rose, Bill Hernan Gomez, like they're just not going to be usable in majority or in pretty much all 12-team formats, and you might be pushing it even in 14-teamers, depending on how the rest of your team shakes out. So that's the way you're looking at it for weekly leagues. If we want to look at the differences between the teams with 3 games, which is probably where your decisions are going to come from, Houston and Boston have the best weeks out of the teams that play 3. They've got the easiest schedule. The Rockets play the Lakers, the Pelicans, and the Nuggets, so great fantasy matchups to boost their stats. Not that the Rockets need much help in that regard. And the Celtics take on the Timberwolves, the Nets, and the Sixers, so some pretty good opportunities for those guys. We're on the other side of things. The Sixers and the Hawks, they have tough ones. The Sixers take on the Warriors, the Mavericks, and the Celtics, while the Hawks have the Spurs, the Grizzlies, and the Blazers. Definitely not good matchups. So when you're looking at players who might be equivalent, say, between Atlanta and Boston, maybe that's Avery Bradley or Dennis Schroeder or Jay Crowder and Tim Hardaway. Not that they're really equivalent, but those matchups could really swing things in one direction or the other. Jay Crowder or Bob Cove, who missed today with a knee issue, if he is ready to go, like those sort of things could swing that decision for you. Now, if we look at weekly or daily changes leagues, what we want to have a look at is how we can make these moves. Now, I said that Wednesday is the day where there's 10 games on, so you're probably not going to be able to get too much action happening on that day. There are no back-to-backs to start the week, so there's no Monday, Tuesday back-to-back. So the first back-to-back we're looking at is actually one of those fake pseudo back-to-backs. And there are some teams that play that pseudo back-to-back on Tuesday, Thursday, and one of them is the Knicks. They only play 2 games, but they play Tuesday, Thursday. So in a daily changes league, ignore what I said about in the weekly changes about Hernan Gomez or Lee. In a daily changes, adding a Knicks player after you've streamed whoever you need to on the Monday, adding one on Tuesday, you get 2 games for the price of 1. You get Tuesday, you get Thursday. That might be Hernan Gomez, it might be Courtney Lee, it might be Derrick Rose, it might be Lance Thomas. There are a few other teams that play that Tuesday, Thursday as well. The Cavs, the Thunder, and the Warriors all have that matchup. So again, it all depends on what sort of stats you're trying to attack as to who you would add there. Is Enes Kanter around? Is Steven Adams being dropped? J.R. Smith maybe gives you some threes for the Cavs. Maybe it's Channing Frye. Maybe it's Dick Jefferson, who put up some pretty good numbers in today's game. So that's another way we can look at it. We want to look at Thursday, Friday back-to-backs. We've got the Nets, the Raptors, and the Magic. So there's some teams there that you can attack at 2-for-1. Friday, Saturday, we've got the Wizards, the Bucks, the Bulls, and the Rockets. And then Saturday, Sunday, we've got another 4 teams with back-to-backs. The Spurs, the Kings, the Blazers, and the Cavs. So there's ample opportunities to make the most of your weekly acquisition limits if you have them. If you don't, just go crazy and put 2 new guys in every single day if you don't have weekly acquisition limits or you don't have weekly games limits. At this point, the players that you might be holding on to at the end of your roster, if you can drop them and turn 4 games into 7 games, it's going to work out in your favor. If you can stream that spot every single day, holding on to a guy who might be the 80th ranked player, say it's someone like, who's in that zone? Say it's, no, I can't even think who would be in that. Let's have a look. What player can I give you? Jordan Clarkson, who was great today. Yeah, Jordan Clarkson, who's in that zone. Dwayne Wade, who's in that zone. You drop those guys and stream someone in every single day, it's going to work out better for you. And it gives you more flexibility to attack the categories you want. That's if you don't have any of those restrictions. Otherwise, it's about attacking the spots where you can and looking at those back-to-backs, as I just mentioned. All right, let's now talk about today's sponsor, and that is, of course, SeatGeek. You guys should know what SeatGeek is now, but if you don't, I'm going to tell you because I'm pretty passionate about how good SeatGeek is for the ticket buying industry. Buying tickets for online for sports and concerts has always been a confusing process, but not anymore. It used to be hard to find the ticket that would give you not only the best seat, but the best value. But SeatGeek has come along. They've created an amazing app and website that makes it easier than ever for fans to buy and sell their tickets. It should be the first place that you go to look for tickets. It's the first place that I go to look for tickets as well. And that's the way that you should be training yourself when you're going to buy something, whether it's as a present for someone, a birthday present for yourself, just something you really want to see, a show coming to your town that you've been waiting to see. SeatGeek's the place that you need to go and check. It does all the price comparison for you by searching multiple ticket sites and ensuring you get the best possible deal. It does all the work and saves you time and, more importantly, or maybe equally importantly, money. SeatGeek also wants to help you bring the most bang for your buck. That's why every ticket on SeatGeek is given a grade based on value. You'll immediately see any underpriced seats and be able to find the best deals to fit your budget. The best part of all this, not only is SeatGeek saving you money, saving you time, but they'll also give you $20 back on your first purchase. The way that you get this $20 rebate is, first of all, download the SeatGeek app. I'm sure you all know how to download the SeatGeek app onto your phone. Do that, click the settings tab and click add a promo code and enter the promo code, which for this podcast is LOFantasy, LOFantasy. Enter that promo code, and once you make your first ticket purchase with SeatGeek, they will send you $20. So you get the savings from SeatGeek and you get $20 back as long as you enter that promo code LOFantasy. So download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code LOFantasy today. Let's go monstrous line of the night. It's Jim Harden once again. Jim was fantastic in the big win for the Rockets over the Cavs. Another triple-double for Harden, 38, 10, and 11. 4 triples, a steal, a block. 13 of 28 from the field, a weird 8 of 12 from the line for Harden, and that's obviously not something that's all that common from him, considering he's an 85% shooter, so when he has a 67% night from the line, it definitely stands out as being weird. But he is the number 1 player for 8 category leagues for the entirety of the season. Yes, over the last month, Westbrook has overtaken him, and he's moved down to 2, and Westbrook's 1. But for the course of the season, Harden is at 1, averaging 29, 8, and 11 with over 3 triples, 1.5 steals, half a block, and really impactful free throw percentage, 85% on 11 attempts, and doesn't hurt your field goal percentage much. He does hurt it. He is a negative in giving you 44% on 19 attempts, so it's a marginal negative. But if we want to look at Z scores, and that's the way that we can measure the impact of field goal percentage, he's less than a -1. So that's nowhere near as impactful as, say, Russ, who's a -2 in that area. So half as destructive to that category. And that can be a real difference. It doesn't force you into a punt in that area, whereas Russ, it pretty much does, just because of how much worse he shoots and the extra volume that he has as well. So Jim Harden is our monstrous line of the night. All right, let's move on to the next one. Let's talk waiver wire line of the night. TJ McConnell of the Philadelphia 76ers. On the surface, the line doesn't look great because you always generally start by looking at points. And he had 6 points. You go, okay, well, that's not awesome. But 5 rebounds, 8 assists, and 3 steals is where the damage was done. He was 1 of 2 from the field. Only took 2 shots, but hit one of them, 50%, and was 4 of 4 from the line. So it's not a brilliant line. And there's lots of talk about McConnell. Yeah, his role is being reduced. He's fading. And that's true to a degree. He's still the 84th ranked player over the last 2 weeks and playing 28 minutes a night, which is down from the 29 that he was playing. So yes, he's lost a minute, but it's not like he's coming down to 22 or 23 a night and dropping outside the top 100. He's not for everyone because he's not hitting threes. He doesn't get points. But what he does is he gets lots of steals and he gets lots of assists. We talked about Harden's Z-score for field goal percentage being a negative or less than -1. We talk about a positive for McConnell. He is over the last month, he is a 2.35 in steals. So that's a huge contribution there, averaging 1.9 steals. For his assists, he's almost at a +2 standard score. These are big, big numbers. And that translates into 7 assists and 1.9 steals per game. They're really useful. And he's also shooting 51% from the field. So the volume's small. So it doesn't really give you much of a positive impact. But it sure as shit doesn't hurt anything. And that can be really useful for a point guard. And he's shooting 83% from the free throw line as well. So probably an underrated guy. Doesn't fit everyone. Again, you're not getting points. You're not hitting threes. In these last 2 months, he has hit... in the last month, he has hit 2 triples in the entire month. He scored 110 points in 13 games. Look, these are not big. He's almost had as many assists as points. 110 points, 92 assists. But those assists can be real hard to find. Points can be hard to find too, but assists can be hard to find, and steals are another thing that he's providing in pretty big quantities. So TJ, if he's around or if you own him, have a look how your team sits, and that's one of the things that you can do obviously on Basketball Monster. Do the team analysis, do the matchup analysis, and see how it works, because on the surface you might say, shit, he averages 7 points a game, man. Why do I bother with this bullshit? His minutes have gone back to 28. But it's all in the details. Points count exactly as much as steals do, as blocks do, as rebounds do, as assists do, as field goal percentage does. And if he's helping you in a significant way in those areas, and his contribution in steals and assists is probably the equivalent of someone averaging 24, 25 points a night. So that is something that you do need to pay attention to. So he is your waiver wire line of the night. So have a look. If he's around, he could very well be a player that helps you at this point in the season, somehow owned in only 40% of Yahoo leagues. The young gun of the night.
Percentages.
Yep. Kristaps, 19 and 10, 2 triples, 4 assists, 5 blocks. That's 11 blocks in 2 games for Porzingis. Yes, he was 7 of 16 from the field and he was 3 of 4 from the line. So not great shooting, and his shooting numbers have really regressed. Over the last 2 months, he's down to 43% from the field and just 30% from 3. You can compare that to what he was doing earlier this season, where he was 45, or actually for the entirety of the season, he was 45 from the field and 37 from 3. Once he's returned from that Achilles problem, the shooting numbers have dipped in a pretty significant fashion. We've seen his true shooting go from 55 down to 52. So it is a bit of a dip there, but what we're getting at the moment is just tremendous block numbers. Recently, we're getting an increase in rebounding as they're playing him correctly at center. And people who are, oh man, they're shutting him down. He missed games, his Achilles shut down. That's everyone's favorite word, and we'll see how many times it actually comes true. Again, it might in the middle of April when you shouldn't be playing fantasy, or the start of April really when you shouldn't be playing fantasy. But the moment he's back and he's playing. Interestingly, they did start with Porzingis at center in the second half, a lineup which I just continually implore them to go with as it is their best situation. But once again, Jeff Hornacek has absolutely no idea what he's doing with his front court rotation on a nightly basis. Shit, even on a halfly basis, he doesn't seem to know what he's doing with those big men. So there's going to be ups and downs for him and the other guys there, Kylo Quinn and Bilhan and Gomez. There's going to be ups and downs with those players, but Porzingis is pretty safe. And if he continues this ability to block shots and these increased rebounds, he's going to be a really valuable asset down the stretch, back to being a top 50 player over the last month, and he's a top 40 player over the course of the season. And we know that he can only get better from here as that efficiency increases, as he plays closer to the basket, and as he officially becomes the number one player on this team, which he is already, but he sort of needs to become officially that guy, is probably the best way for me to phrase that. All right, let's talk dud of the night. Thaddeus Young. Not a good night from Thad, 13, 5 and 1. And honestly, it's not a terrible night, but when we look at dud of the night, I'm looking at the worst performer who's owned in over 70% of leagues, and that was Thad. So that's not bad. What you do like from Thad is the fact that he played as many minutes as he did. He saw 38 minutes of action for these 13 points, and he now has scored in double digits in 3 consecutive games. But no steals in this one, only the 5 rebounds. The wrist is continuing to bother him. He's still, over the last week, he's still the 188th ranked player, even though he is averaging in double digits, because he's just not doing anything else. The rebounds are below par. He's not hitting any threes at all. He's getting no assists. The steals are well down, which is something that was really keeping him afloat. In a 10-team league, you get rid of him. In a 12-team league, you might have to as well, as I touched on earlier. These are the sort of players that you move on and stream and get the right guys into the right spots. Anything deeper than 12, I would hold on despite the last month ranking sitting him at 253rd. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. But in other leagues, shallower formats, I would definitely consider moving on from him, assuming that the right player is out there for you to add. So the minutes were impressive and they were encouraging, but they obviously weren't enough to allow him to put up a big performance. All right, before we move into these games, we had a couple of questions come through on the live stream, so I might just get to those now. Where are we? All right. Oh, had more than I expected. Eric says, I love the Ultimate Warrior tee. Thanks, Eric. That's not a question, but that's fine. I'll mention it. Ronald Coley, how do you know when to pick a bench player like Clarkson tonight for DFS? I keep picking starters and miss out. It doesn't matter, Ron. It doesn't matter if they start or not. It shouldn't make any difference. And I say that a million times. I don't give a shit whether they start or not. It makes no difference whether a player starts. Clarkson's been getting consistent minutes. I mention him pretty much every time the Lakers play. He is going to get big minutes. It doesn't matter whether he starts. Sometimes the way that coaches refuse to put guys in the starting lineup is weird, and I talk about that all the time with Munro, but it doesn't matter. Starting isn't the be-all and end-all of everything. You can see that with Thonmaker. You can see that with David Nwaba today. You can see that with any number of players. Yeah, the starter doesn't matter. It's the players who get the most minutes. Billy Lee says, would you start Porzingis next week on weekly lock with one pot? No, absolutely not. Touched on that already, Bill. No, not a chance. And and Ryan backs me up. Josh mentions not playing him. Exactly. And if there's a risk of a blizzard keeping him to one game, that's even more of a no. So absolutely not, Bill. I know that the blocks are enticing, but I reckon odds are that he's not going to get 11 blocks in 2 games next week. I don't think you should be banking on that, and 2 games is just not going to work for me. Sorry, mate. Let's move on to the games now and talk about them in a bit more detail. The first one of those games we're going to cover is Chicago and Boston, and probably should start a second podcast for me to talk about how bad the Bulls are, because I don't want to waste all of your time, but they are horrific. 9 points in the first quarter, 26 in the first half. The organization is a disgrace. The ownership is a disgrace. The front office is a disgrace. Hoiberg does not know what he's doing. He played 13 players in this game. 13. They ended up scoring 80 points and losing to the Celtics. Jim Butler did not play at all in the fourth. Isaiah Thomas didn't play at all in the fourth. They lost by 20, and there was no good players on the court in the fourth quarter. They are disgraceful. They are terrible. There are bad decisions all over the organization, front office moves, coaching moves. And I'm not going to talk too much about front office decisions, but Fred, you played 13 players. Your third best player is Nikola Mirotic. And to be honest, with the way Dwayne Wade's going, he's not far away from being a second. And you don't play him at all. I saw someone come out with a conspiracy theory today. I believe it was Kevin Ferrigan. Apologies if it wasn't. And he said, because there was that story that came out about Bulls management when Jimmy Butler refused a rookie contract extension, that Bulls management went to Tibbs, what do I call him, Tibbs, to Tibbs, and said he won't accept our low ball extension, which I think was 4 years, $48 million. Don't play him this season. Limit his minutes so that we can retain him, so he doesn't get a big restricted offer, and we can retain him for cheap. And Tibbs obviously said, screw you, that's not happening. I'm going to play him, and probably just went, I'm going to play him 45 minutes a night. And Butler really started to take off then, obviously, and that was his breakout season. So that's the story about what happened there. So the rumor is that, or the rumor, not a rumor, this is a theory posited by Kevin, saying that maybe they did the same with Mirotic. He wouldn't accept a rookie extension, and they've said, don't play him. Keep his value down so we can retain him for cheap. And Freddie Hoiberg probably doesn't have the same balls as what Tibbs did, and didn't tell Garpax to, mufflers for your kids. He didn't tell them to fuck off. And that's where we are now with Mirotic. It is bafflingly crazy to me. Now, as for the fantasy value in this thing, Jim Butler, he's going through his standard March swoon. 5 points in 32 minutes on 2 of 11 shooting. Did not go to the free throw line once. That is terrible for a guy that's been getting there so much, and so much of his value has been anchored in the free throw percentage category. 7 boards, 3 assists, and 2 steals. Butler will be fine. But this Bulls team is a mess. Dwayne Wade was terrible. 8-3 on 36% shooting in just the 26 minutes, and he hasn't hit 30 minutes in either of the previous 2 games. If you're in a 10-team league, I don't think that Dwayne is an absolute must-hold guy. He is exasperated with this organization. Whether he comes back next season, there's obviously lots of factors to do with that. but there is just so much weirdness happening with this squad at the moment. The point guards, he played 4 point guards. Shit, no he didn't. He played 5. 5 point guards in this game. Rajon Rondo played 19 minutes and had 6 assists and 3 steals. That's great for that streaming. That's great for what I talked about with TJ McConnell. That can help you in those areas, but there's no reliability in his minutes. Campaign looked terrible on the court, but actually his fantasy numbers were good. 7, 2, and 3 with 2 steals. And that's why I think that if Payne is playing minutes, he can become a really valuable fantasy guy. It's not going to be this season. And I was pretty adamant about that at the trade deadline, and it continues to be the case. Jaren Grant started and somehow played less minutes than he did in the last game. 9 minutes for 0 points. Confusing. Michael Carter-Williams got into the rotation. 8 minutes for 2 points. There is nothing to see here. Bob Portis remains bad. Shocking. 21 minutes, 12 and 8. 12 and 8. 12 and 8's fine, but 21 minutes is not good. No other stats. He looks lost all the time that he's out there. The 12 points came on a little flurry towards the end of the game as well. He was completely missing. He shouldn't be owned in 12-team leagues. Carter-Williams, obviously. Grant shouldn't. Rondo probably shouldn't in most cases, and Wade is borderline. Robin Lopez had a solid game, and he hustled hard. Maybe he's the third best player. Maybe he's better than Mirotic. 13, 3, and 3 with a steal and 2 blocks for Robin, but his minutes are all up and down as well. He is fine to own if he helps what you need. But it's not going to be for everyone. It's not going to be in every league. I liked what I saw from Denzel Valentine again. 23 minutes for 13 points with 3 triples, but he's just not playing enough considering that every dickhead in the world seems to be able to get into the game apart from Nikola Mirotic, and that's extremely frustrating. This team is just a disaster. Yes, they're out of the playoffs, as they should. Remember the 3 alphas? Remember the first week of the season? Man, the Bulls are good, man. They can challenge for a top 4 seed. No, they can't. They couldn't then, they can't now, and they're terrible, and they're imploding, and I don't even know what to say. Boston, what do I take out of this? Isaiah Thomas played only 24 minutes. He had 22 points. He hit 4 triples. He had 3 steals. He shot 64%. He was playing against the guys that don't give a shit at all, and that's fine. Good numbers. I think the best thing from Celtics fan point of view and from fantasy owners' point of view is that Al Horford got engaged. Not to his missus, I'm sure. I think he's already married. But I mean, 12, 7, and 6, he was involved in the game. 2 triples, a steal, 2 blocks, 71% shooting. Still not as active offensively as you want him to be, but that's a very, very good performance. Well, Avery Bradley, his minutes restriction were limited, but they didn't factor into that equation that the fact that he'd be playing a D-League caliber team. So he only saw 26 minutes and had 17 and 6 with 3 threes and 3 steals. He is right to go. That's going to limit Marcus Smart, though. Smart had a good line, 12, 6, and 3, 2 steals, 2 threes, but only 27 minutes, and that's sort of in line what he's been playing recently. And that's not going to be for everybody. More a punt field goal player, but it's still just not a must-own guy. Not much to get out of this. I love that Kelly Olynyk played 31 minutes. Always love seeing that. 11 and 9, 3 assists, a steal and a 3. Great. Love Olynyk. I just don't trust it at all. It's just not going to happen on a consistent basis. So leave Kelly for your 14 and probably your 16 team leagues as well. Let's move on to the next game now. We are talking about the Miami Heat and the Indiana Pacers. Hassan Whiteside has a real history of going at Miles Turner and really giving it to him, and he did it again. 26 and 21 with a block. Whiteside, for all of this shit that he has copped this season from the fantasy community, why did I waste my 10th pick on him, my 14th pick? Over the last 2 months, he's a top 20 player. He has fixed his free throw problem somehow, and that is one of the weirdest things that I've seen. And it goes on to him because he fixed it last season. For 2-3 months, he was shooting 70+% from the line because he changed his style. Went back to the start of this season. Nah, why would I stick with something that works? Why would you do that? Let's go back to the shit that doesn't work. And then for months, he was a punt free throw guy. The last month or so, he's back at over 75% from the line. Just weird shit that goes on with this guy. The blocks are back over 2 a game over the last month as well. They're not at 3.7 per game, but they're back at over 2, and he is starting to repay that price that you put into him. And I know I drafted him at the end of the first round in a draft, and he obviously hasn't lived up to that area. But over the last month or last 2 months, he's a top 20 guy, and that's not too big of a fall. There was no Goran Dragic in this game, so Joshie Richardson started. He had 9 and 8, didn't dish an assist playing at point guard, but had 3 steals and a block. You know I love Josh, but yeah, that 37 minutes, it's not happening every night. While Dion Waiters played 36 himself and had 20 points, 8 boards and 6 assists. He hit 3 triples, no defensive numbers, and definitely not great with his shooting 44 from the field and 1 of 3 from the line. It still continues to amaze me, the recovery of Dion Waiters this season. I still refuse to be convinced that when fantasy finals come that he won't let you down. I just get the feeling, and not necessarily because of him, but because the Heat gets everyone back together and his minutes go from 32 to 27 and he doesn't hit 50%, he hits 42%. And then everything drops. And that's what I am worried about, but he should be owned for now. Jimmy Johnson wasn't really our martyr in this one. He was all right, 32 minutes for 14 and 4, but none of the other stuff that makes him so good. No steals, no assists, no blocks there. While Tyler Johnson really struggling, 1 of 9 shooting for 2, 2, and 5. That's 2 stinkers in a row from Tyler, and you have to think that his shoulder is bothering him. I've been adamant that Johnson's been a must-own player for the majority of this season. I'm not 100% sure that he is now. With such a really strong streaming week coming up this week, he might be that player that's your 12th best player or your 13th best player even, that could be moved on for someone else or for multiple people to help fill what you need, because he is struggling a little bit with that shoulder in a game that Dragic missed and he played just 25 minutes. It's a little bit of a concern with that injury that's been bothering him for, honestly, the majority of this season at this point. Let's move on to the next game. The New York Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets. As I said, they made that change to their starting lineup again at halftime. And Lance Thomas played 32 minutes. He had 13, 5, and 4. He had a key block late. He hit 3 triples. A good Lance Thomas night. Probably would be looking at Lance as a guy that's going to score 2 points or so in the next game. And that's just what he does. But the constant specter of Lance Thomas is what impacts guys like Bill Hernangomez, or the fact that they can swing him in as they should, or as they should try to do at least, put him in and run Porzingis at center. Now, Thomas is just your 16-team sort of a guy, but he's actually putting together some pretty nice numbers. They're coming on real high field goal percentage, which probably isn't going to be able to stick. In the last game, Melo put out his silent protest against the triangle, taking just 9 shots and saying that he was just playing within the flow of the offense. He took 10 shots in the first quarter in this game and had 27, 7, and 3. Had a block, hit a 3. Only shot 39%, but the silent usage protest is done and we're back to good old Melo. Probably doesn't need to take that many shots, but it was good for his owners to see the production start to come in. Derrick Rose check. Hit any threes? No. 17, 5, and 2, but amazingly, 2 steals. But we trade the steals off for his what has been good field goal percentage as he goes, just 33% from the field. Another fine night without being spectacular, while Courtney Lee continues to play just massive minutes. 39 minutes for Lee, 15 points with not a lot else, but he is a solid 12-teamer at this point in his season. Bill Hernangomez, 27 minutes the last 2 games, just 17 here, 6 and 10 with a block. His biggest strength is field goal percentage. That's the biggest category that he contributes in, and with Hornacek, we know that we can't trust what he's going to do with the big men. We know we can't trust that because it changes on a nightly basis. So Bill is fine. I wouldn't classify him as a must-own player just because this stuff will happen. Now, this was a game where Brook Lopez was torching him and getting out to the perimeter and destroying him. And they limited him in that sense. So that he could easily go back and play 27 in the next game. But he's never going to be a 30-minute-a-night guy, and he's never going to even be consistently at a 27 minutes per night. So that makes him, I guess, on the border of where you need to be. Good to see rugged Ronnie Baker back into the lineup, and I say that completely facetiously. Onto the Brooklyn team. Brook Lopez had hit 3 career 3-pointers before this season. He hit 4 in about the first 5 minutes of this game, ended with 25 and 6 with 6 triples, a steal, and a block. And Jezza Lynn was not a good night from Jeremy. 3 of 14 from the field, but what was good? He played 27 minutes, so another tick up with his playing time. 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, hit a 3, still should be owned, in my opinion, in pretty much every league. Karis LeVert had a good night, 13, 4, and 4, 2 steals, 2 triples, shot 100% from the field, so probably a little bit unrealistic to expect that sort of production from Karis to keep going. Love him. I think he's going to be good. It's just not going to be this year. Same with Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, who had 14 and 11 and still can only manage 24 minutes because I don't know what shit system Kenny Atkinson is running here. But hey, the Nets got the win, so maybe I'm the idiot. Shawn Kilpatrick had 8 and 8 in 25 minutes, 1 of 9 shooting. He is not a standard league player. While Isaiah Whitehead chimed in with a nice little 10, 3, and 2 cameo, 2 steals and 2 triples, while with him and Spencer Dinwiddie putting up some interesting numbers just on a nightly basis. Dinwiddie had 6 assists here as well. They're really good 16 to 18 team league players. Quincy Acey also apparently can't miss, hit all 4 of his threes for 12 points with 6 rebounds, and he is clearly the backup center over Justin Hamilton. So the 20-teamers, you got Hamilton, you make the switch, and you go and add Quincy Acey. What a move that is to win a championship. Any questions that have come in now that need mentioning? Jason Yu says, this is flashing back to Tyler Johnson. Would you drop Tyler Ulis for Tyler Johnson? I don't think so. I don't think I would necessarily hold Tyler Ulis, though, in every situation, but I don't think Johnson is a priority add at this point. Tim, you ask a question about Luke Walton. I will get back to that in a second when we talk about the Lakers, but just as a quick spoiler, Tim, I don't agree with your assessment there, but I will talk about that in a sec. And Luke just also chimes in that Brook Lopez is putting that injury prone tag behind him. Brook Lopez hasn't been injured for 3 seasons. It takes a while to get that injury prone tag off him. Look at his game log. He's played over 70 games for 3 straight years. Well, he hasn't played 70 yet this year, but he has for the previous 2. And in fact, he had those 2 years that he missed. And the other 2 seasons before that, I think he played 82 games in 75 games. He just had this weird foot problem, but it looks like it's all good. Portland and Phoenix. Dame Lillard, a big night, 39, 6 and 2 with a steal, hit 4 triples and did it efficiently, while CJ McCollum had 26, 4 and 4 with a triple one, also going at over 50% from the field. So good nights from their stars, and Yusuf Nurkic bounced back after a subpar performance against the Wizards and Marcin Gortat. Against Marquise Chris, wasn't as tough. Shocking. 12 and 11 in 30 minutes for Nurk with 3 blocks. Got the field goal percentage back up, and he is going to be a really solid option for the rest of the way. Let's talk about someone who probably isn't, and that's Mo Harkless. He played just 22 minutes and had 2, 1 and 2. I don't think you would have found a bigger fan of Mo Harkless than me earlier in the season, but once he started dropping off when we saw Al-Farouq Aminu return, and then we saw Evan Turner take his role, I was off. The production was fine, and it was doing what it needed to do in his 33 minutes a night, but then he went down to 27, then he went down to 24 minutes a night. And then Evan Turner went out, and he went, all right, so Mo's the guy we go and grab, but I don't think the value's necessarily going to last for the rest of the year. And this is a game where Evan Turner didn't play it, and Harkless played just 22 as Alan Crabb took more of those minutes. So for Harkless, Evan Turner is going to be back, it looks like, next weekend. He'll miss the rest of this week, but he'll be with the team for their game in Atlanta on Saturday. So you've got 3 more games of Harkless. 3 games of Harkless this week going to be worth it, or would there be someone else who might have 4 games in a weekly league that helps, or streaming Harkless a spot, will it be more worthwhile? I think the answer to both those questions is probably yes. As for Krabby, he played 34 minutes and was very Alan Krabby, 7, 5 and 2. He hit a triple, he had a steal. That's just what he does. Now, if you look at his recent rankings, they're high. He's like a top 100 guy, but he's shooting like 56% from 3 in the last 2 weeks and over 55% from the field. Numbers which are clearly unsustainable. And this is what we talked about, or I talked about, and you listened, ad nauseum about Bojan Bogdanovic. It's great. He's just not going to continue to shoot 70% from the field, and when he does, you're left with 10, 1 and 1, and they're just shit numbers. And that's what happens with Crab. The shots don't go in. He gives you 7, 5 or 2, and you go, okay, well, what's this crap? Fine as a streamer, fine to add for points and threes, but he's just not well-rounded. He just doesn't do enough. Al-Farouq Aminu had a triple one. He had 9 and 12 in 30 minutes, and he obviously fits needs for plenty of teams. On to the Suns. Tyler Ulis, a really solid night from Ulis. 19 minutes, 10, 2 and 6. But let's look at those minutes. 19. Yeah. Yes, the assists are nice. Yes, the scoring is nice. Yes, he got aggressive and he hit some shots. He is not a must-own. You want to talk about a guy like a Rajon Rondo, or even your TJ McConnell. Yeah, these assists are valuable. And he's going to get 20 minutes-ish a night, but he's not going to play 30 a night. I don't think they're just going to come out there and say, all right, Eric, see you later. We're just going to run with Tyler for the last month of the year. I don't think that'll happen. And Ulis can be valuable, but he's far from a must-own guy. This is a very nice performance from him. It is very encouraging. 6 assists in 18 minutes is good, but 18 minutes is the worry. There was no Alex Len again, so we had to go with Marquise Chris at centre. He managed to last 24 minutes and had 8 and 6 with a block. Had 4 fouls, just racks them up. He played quite a bit in the first half and then didn't barely see the court at all in the second half because he struggles. He struggles with so much with what he does in terms of being able to do anything defensively. He is fine to own. We can talk about, they're going to ramp him up. They'll start playing him in. Who's taking the minutes off him now that they're going to just kick out of the rotation? Maybe it's Dudley, but they just can't keep him on the court because he literally just cannot stay on the court long enough to start playing 30 minutes a night. Once he figures that out, if he figures that out, then sure, in 30 minutes a night, he's a must-own player. Even in 27 a night, he probably is. But I don't have the faith that he's going to be able to do that on a nightly basis. We haven't seen it for 4 months that he's been able to stay on the court. And nothing in his history tells us, this guy's a smart guy, he'll get it figured out, he'll be able to stay out of foul trouble. Nothing tells us that at all. He came into the season with one of the worst foul rates in the NCAA, and it's translated here. Derek Jones got another start. I don't know why. 4 and 3 in 25 minutes for Jonesy. And again, it's people are blocking. Why won't they start Alan Williams? And I talked about it before. It doesn't matter necessarily if someone starts. And Williams still went 12 and 10 with a steal and a block in 25 minutes. But to me, it's a pretty clear indication of what they think of Williams. They just won't give him 34 minutes. They don't envisage him as a future starter. They envisage him as a future role player. Maybe. And he puts up numbers. No denying any of this. He puts it up, and he is ownable. In pretty much all 12-team leagues, he should be owned. But his ceiling is really limited in a situation when there literally is no other center on the roster. Actually, there is another one, Tyson Chandler, who was away for personal reasons. Regardless, he wasn't playing anyway. But there's no other center playing, and he still plays just half of the minutes in the game. So that should be, and I talked about this the other day, is that when you're looking at him in, say, Dynasty League, say you've got him and you're out of the playoffs, but you picked him up, the numbers are good here. If you can translate that into another top 100 asset coming back your way, I would look to do it because I don't see Williams' upside as being high. Devin Booker was great, 28 points on 50% shooting, 5 boards, 3 assists and a steal. Weirdly, didn't hit a 3. Actually, weirdly, didn't attempt a 3. Really weird for a guy that comes in and the comparison is Klay Thompson. He's just a 3-point bomber. No, he's not. He's just completely different. I know he looks the same because he's got similar hair and a similar face and he's got pale skin. He's not the same player, like, at all. Didn't attempt a single 3 and still scored 28 points on 26 shots. TJ Warren struggled a bit, 10 and 6, but he should be owned everywhere. While Bledsoe, the minutes just keep, they're not 35 a game. They're just in the 31 to 32 range. 31 here, 19, 3 and 5 with 2 steals and 3 threes. And I think that's where it's going to sit. We've just seen a subtle decrease in his playing time, but the value's still going to be there with him. Let's move on to the next game. Cleveland and Houston. LeBron 37 and 5, 2 steals and 4 triples. Big night for James. Bad free throw night for James. That's pretty much par for the course. While Kyrie had 28, 3 and 8 with 2 blocks and 3 threes. Interestingly, LeBron shooting your career worst free throw type numbers. You never hear the argument about he's bad because he can't hit his free throws. I know it's not 50% DeAndre Jordan. I know it's not 40% Andre Drummond. But when Dwight is a bad free throw shooter, he's at like 58%, 59%. It's not that far away from what James is doing this season, but we just never hear it. We just never hear, man, free throws are a part of the game. You got to hit them. You just never hear that. It's weird, the regression in his free throw shooting as well. As for Kyrie, 28, 3 and 8, 2 blocks, 3 triples. Some ridiculous moves, ridiculous shots. He's really fun to watch on one end of the court. Or Dick Jefferson, which I touched on earlier, had a big night, 16 points with 3 rebounds and 4 triples. He hit all 6 of his shots. That is clearly not going to happen again, so don't get sucked in by Dick. Also, LeBron said that Kevin Love is going to be back very soon. That's obviously as inexact of a time frame that you can give, but it makes you think that maybe end of this week you might see Love back, and then any Dick Jeff or Channing Frye value just floats out the window. Frye hit another 2 triples. That's what he does. He hits 3s. That's it. Or J.R. Smith. He used to hit 3s. Doesn't do anything anymore. 2, 2, and 2. The bad version of Richie Beno in 22 minutes. 2 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists, and nothing else. Darren Williams dished another 5 assists. So he's another guy you put in that Rondo category. You need some assists. Maybe Williams can help you. He's not going to help you in any other area, and he's not going to be a mainstay player. But the assists can be really useful. On to Houston. Big game from Nene. 12 and 6 with 3 steals and a block in 22 minutes. But that's his ceiling. We talk about Alan Williams having a minute ceiling. Nene clearly has one. Or Ryan Anderson got, not hot, but he hit some shots. 16 and 6 with 4 triples. And that's what he does. Lou Williams had 5 and 6 on 7 shots in 15 minutes. If you need to move on from Lou Williams in a 10-team league, do it. He has been poor for a lot of this time. The shooting is terrible. And you can wait for it to come back, sure. But if you wait, this might be your last week. And I don't think his upside is top 50, top 60, top 70, and waiting on a player to get back to being the 90th best player is not worth it in 10-team leagues. In 12s, I probably would hold, but I would move in a 10. Trev Ariza had 12 and 7, while Beverly had 13, 3 and 4. With 2 steals and 3 triples. A good night there, while Eric Gordon played 29 and had 13, 3 and 3. Another solid night from Gordo. But he hasn't been the greatest, but this was a nice, productive performance right across the box score. I don't even think that he is necessarily a must-own 10-team league player. Let's move on to the next game, and that's Philadelphia and Los Angeles. The Sixers were without Bob Cove, who suffered a knee injury late in the game against the Clippers on Saturday and sat this one out. He's day-to-day at the moment. Hopefully he's ready to go not far from now. We saw Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot remain in the starting lineup, and he started alongside Gerald Henderson. Luwawu-Cabarrot, who the Lakers announcers... Now, occasionally I might say a name wrong. Very rarely. I think very rarely I say a name wrong. But the Lakers PA announcer announcing the starting lineup, I've never heard a name. It's like he'd never seen the name before. It's like they gave him the list and he went down. He went, oh my God, what is this? Who is this player? Is this guy real? Starting at shooting guard, Timothy Luwawu Kuraba. Like, what? It is like he's literally never seen the name before. He must have never looked at that list before and gone, hey, shit, anyone know how to say this name? Can we have some help? Have I ever watched a Sixers game before? Have I done anything? It's like someone just gone, read this. All right, I'm a professional. Here we go. Timothé Luwawu Kuraba. No, mate. Work it out. I like Luwawu-Cabarrot. He puts up... no, he doesn't. He can put up good numbers. I like what I see from him on the court. I like his movement. I like his defense. I like his ability to pass and shoot. I think he's going to be very good with Ben Simmons next season. He's a long way off being a standard contributor, probably 2 years away. But I like what he brings. In the last couple of games, we've seen that from Luwawu-Cabarrot. We've seen positivity. We've seen a really good scoring night. 64% shooting is unrepresentative of what he can do. But I do really like him, and I hope they continue to give him a 25-minute role moving forward, and that might be a 20-team league situation. Dario Saric was big again. Not big, he was monstrous. 29, 7 and 5, 2 steals, 3 threes, 1 block. Another big game from Saric. At this point, you would have to think that they're going to go with him as the Rookie of the Year. I would still give it to Embiid, but I think it's going to be Saric at this stage. Jahlil Okafor, another good game. Yes, I said it. 27 minutes for Oak. 23 and 4, a steal and a block. But he was really helped by these big percentages, 67 from the field and 88 from the line on 7 of 8 shooting. The Lakers are a great matchup for him just in terms of ease of opponent for centers. And he's a fine guy to add if you want scoring. He's never going to play 30 a night, I don't think. And he's not going to be a rebounder, nor is he going to be a guy that contributes in other areas. But you can be a field goal percentage points guy, and giving a positive contribution in 2 categories might be all you need at this point. Richaun Holmes was pretty good as well. 10 and 5 with 2 steals and a block. Hit a triple, and that's decent, but I don't think he's a must-own player. I think he's fine to own, and if you sent me a roster with him on it, I wouldn't go, man, can you get that dickhead off your team? Like, I wouldn't say that. I'd say, that's fine. But I wouldn't be like, everyone, can you go check your lineups, check to see if he's available and grab him. That's not how I would approach Holmes, because they are going to start Okafor every game. And unless the injuries are there, he's going to start. And even the games that we saw that Okafor was out, we saw Holmes play 23 minutes due to foul trouble, because he does have a foul trouble issue. He can be a very good player who hits blocks, gets steals, hits threes, score. He's a poor rebounder as well. But I'm not saying that he is a must-own player. Justin Anderson had 8 points in 21, while Gerald Henderson had 9 in his 25, and Source Castillo struggled. Let's talk about the Lakers. Now that question, Tim, you asked the question, is Luke Walton the worst coach in the NBA? No. Have you met Fred Hoiberg? Have you met Jason Kidd? Have you seen Alvin Gentry? How's Earl Watson take you? Now, Walton makes some weird decisions. I will grant you that. He says, is he the worst coach in the NBA, or is he following orders to lose? The Lakers want to lose. No doubt about that. And they would have said, look, let's see what these young guys have got. They would not go out there and say, you need to lose this game. I'm pretty confident of that. And he says the reason he asked this is because if he played Zubats at all in the second half, they will win. The Lakers, the worst of all time. Probably not the worst of all time. We'll talk about Zubats now. Now, I am a massive Zubats fan. If you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you will know that pre-draft last season, I was trying to get my hands on a Zubats or a Luwawu-Cabarrot Megalex jersey. I was talking Zubats up as a guy that you want to take in the first round, probably the top 20, top 25, and that didn't happen. When he was drafted, said that this is a guy is going to be the first or second best rookie in terms of per minute production. And then the dickheads in the front office went inside Timofey Mozgov. Zubac should have been their starter, or they should have been looking at him as their starter. There's so many people, I'm shocked that he's turned into this. I don't know why. To me, it made sense that Zubac can become a good player. Now, he started this game. He had 3 blocks in about the first 2 minutes. He ended with 10 and 6 and 4 blocks in 19 minutes. He had, I think, 13 minutes in the first half. Did not play a second in the fourth quarter. And the reason for that is, Tim, is that the small ball lineup with Larry Nance at centre, which is a lineup I really like, by the way, got them back into the game. They were down, and that lineup got them back, and he ran with it for massive, massive stretches. Basically didn't make any subs in that fourth quarter. I think he moved Nwaba out for Geordie Clarkson a couple of minutes into the fourth quarter, and just went with that same lineup the whole way, because that small ball lineup had got them back into it. So I'm not too worried about Zubac. I think that Zubac is a guy that you own over a guy like Alan Williams, maybe even over a Cody Zeller, because if he gets 27 a night, then shit, it's all over. You are talking about top 70 value, almost without a doubt, in my mind. High field goal percentage, good free throw shooter, high blocks, good rebounds, good scoring, can get some steals. Never hitting threes, never getting assists. We know all that. And 10 and 6 with 4 blocks is good. I look to add him wherever I could in the leagues I'm still alive in. And you should too. And don't get too disheartened by this low minutes, because I think it was one of those anomalous performances. Now, Walton has been confusing with rotations a lot of this time this season, with spreading minutes out a lot. That has definitely changed now, and we're seeing Ingram, Clarkson, Randall, Russell all getting big minutes. If he wants to include Zubac in that young core, then we're going to see Zubac get minutes. Now, Magic Johnson came out and said his usual fluffy bullshit. He needs to get 30 to 35 minutes tonight. I don't think that's happening. It could. I don't think it is, but I reckon we're going to see a pretty significant chunk of Zubac. They like Zubac, and they do think maybe he's not a starting center in the NBA on a good team. Maybe he's not. But he's going to be a core part of this team more than, say, a guy like Tariq Black. And I think we're going to see 25 minutes or so from Zubac on most nights. Now, Geordie Clarkson was great. 30 points, 6 boards, 8 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. Fantastic performance. Like, I think it was Ronald earlier on said, how did you know to pick a guy like this off the bench? Just because these are the minutes he gets every night. He gets 25 to 30, 30 plus most nights. Uncle P out of the rotation, out of the starting lineup, out of the rotation. So that's even more minutes for Geordie Clarkson, and that's going to be the way it goes moving forward. We had David Nwaba move in. He had 6 points in 16 minutes. Tyler Ennis got more minutes. He had 8 points with 2 assists in 16 minutes, but it's going to be Geordie. We're going to have D'Angelo, Geordie Clarkson, Brandon Ingram play 33 to 38 minutes most nights. Then you're going to have Randall, Nance, and Ingram Randall, Nance, and Zubac as the other. And they're going to be your six highest minutes guys, and then you throw in Tariq Black there and Corey Brewer, Nwaba, and Ennis just cleaning up what's left over. Clarkson should be owned, but as I said earlier, in 10-team situations, you're moving on from that guy with unlimited ads, unlimited waiver moves, unlimited games played. Getting multiple players in might actually be worth it in his place. Brandon Ingram is a guy that I haven't been pretty impressed with this season, and for good reason. But a good night from him. 38 minutes, 12, 3 and 1, but 3 steals and 2 blocks, and good percentages. Now, if you can deal with the shit percentages, which he almost undoubtedly is going to go back to in the next game, the minutes are going to be there. So he could have definite stream value. They play again on Monday, the Lakers, so Ingram could be a guy you can look to add. I would prioritize him behind a guy. Say Clarkson is available, I would add Clarkson. Say Zubac is available, I would add Zubac. But Ingram can have this on and off 12-team league value, and he looks a lot better over the last 2 to 3 games. Larry Nance had 8, 4, and 2, but had the 4 steals. He is quite good with defensive numbers. He is quite good at getting his hands on balls.
Giggity!
Didn't block a shot, and he hit 2 threes, and that's something that I thought that he can do, and he hasn't really ever done until the last couple of games, where I think he's hit 3 in the last 2 games, and he'd hit 3 previously in his career before that. He's not quite a 12-team league guy, but you can roster him for steals and blocks. That can be helpful, and I hope they play a lot more of him at center. Julius Randle had 21 and 12. Not great percentages, but still, that's a big line. 2 blocks is also pretty fantastic, so a good night from Julius there. Also, Nwaba had 6 points in his 16-minute start. Wasn't D'Angelo Russell's greatest night. He had an extraordinarily embarrassing fumble of the ball out of bounds. 11, 4, and 7 for D'Angelo in 33 minutes on 29% shooting, so obviously that's horrible. But I'll still take 11, 4, and 7 and 33 minutes on a night where he struggles, that's still pretty decent level of production. All right, now before we go to a break, I'll just have a look if any more questions have come in. We might take those now, and then we'll head into the break. Now, who else came in? Nope, I think we're good for questions for the moment. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back transitioning ourselves to DFS mode and talking about all the action that we've got coming up for Monday. Ladies and gents, we are back. We're going to talk DFS action now. We'll start with the perfect DFS lineup from Sunday on FanDuel. This is Dame Lillard at 47.2 and Jordy Clarkson at 51.2. For the shooting guards, Karis LeVert at 27.8 and Jim Harden at 66.5. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, 28.2 and Lance Thomas at 27. Some high-powered small forwards there. Power forwards, Porzingis at 41.5 and Julius Randle at 39.7, and Hassan Whiteside came in at 51.2 for a total of 380.3, and that cost $59,900. On DraftKings, Spencer Dinwiddie 25.5, Jordy Clarkson 52.5, LeVert at 29, Šarić at 29.25, Porzingis at 46.5, Jim Harden at 75.5, Luwawu Cabarrot at 23.5, and Hassan Whiteside at 54.75 for a total of 356.5, and that cost $49,800. We've got 8 games on Monday, a perfect amount of games for DFS action. So let's get stuck into those now. The first one of those games is those wacky Chicago Bulls. They take on the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets are favored by 7. The total is a not ideal 200. Good news for Frank Kaminsky fans, he could be back. He is listed as questionable, but obviously the return of Frank puts a little bit of doubt into the rotation. Guys like Cody Zeller, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, and Marvin Williams will lose some playing time with Frank back in. How much does Frank play? Does he play? He won't play the 36 that he did before, but will he play 24? Will he play 28? So there's a bit of uncertainty in that Charlotte front court. With the Bulls, there's all uncertainty. None of it's to do with injury. One thing I know is that Nikola Mirotic is not going to play. Stupidity. Anyway, let's talk about the point guards. Kemba Walker is at 8,400, and now he gets to take on the Bulls. Yippee. He should be looking at a 40er here, I would guess, at 8,400. He dropped 50 in the last game. He's averaging 48 the last 3 times he took on the Bulls. I think he's a very, very good play at that sort of a price. He's at 81 on DraftKings as well. No reason to get too cute and fade him. The Bulls point guards, forget it. Rondo, Carter Williams, Payne, Cannon, Grant. No. Shooting guards, Jezza Lamb's at $4,000. He also could lose some playing time to Kaminsky, and it sounds dumb because they play different positions, but hear me out. Kaminsky comes back, he plays the 5 and the 4, so he goes and backs up Marv Williams. That takes away the minutes that Michael Kidd-Gilchrist plays at the 4. So Kidd-Gilchrist comes back to the 3. It takes away the minutes that Marco Bellinelli plays at the 3, and Jeremy Lamb plays at the 3, and pushes them down towards the 2. Nick Batum's not losing any playing time, so the guys that are going to cop it are going to be, yes, Williams, yes, Zeller, yes, Kidd-Gilchrist, but on the lower end, you're going to have Jeremy Lamb and you're going to have Bellinelli losing some playing time. Now, I've been impressed with Lamb, and the one thing I've been impressed with is the fact that he's on the court for consistent minutes, because if that happens, that means that Clifford's he's in Clifford's good books. He had 26 points in 21 minutes in the last game, and if Lamb can get 22, 23 minutes, he can exceed that value. I wouldn't be putting a huge amount of reliance on it, but at 3,500 on DraftKings especially, that is appealing, as he has averaged 22 over his last 5 and 22 points, 3,500. Sign me up for that. Nicola Batum is at 7,300. His numbers have been good. This is a good matchup for Batum as well. Got no problem considering him a guy to look at. 72 on DraftKings has some value. Well, Dwayne Wade has been pretty piss poor, and 7,600 for Wade is not something that I'm really interested in, averaging just the 23 over the last 5. Just completely disinterested, not playing enough minutes. I feel sorry for him to a degree, but he's also been as inactive as anybody in terms of defense and really contributes to the overall malaise of this team. Denzel Valentine, just not enough playing time. Jim Butler, 8,900. Are we going to get insipid Jim Butler, or are we going to get locked in Jim Butler? I think the way that he plays in this game is going to say a lot about what I think about it, and I know that he cares a lot about what I think. He must care so much. But I'm a Bulls fan, you know that, and I've spoken out against Butler quite a few times. I don't think that he is a great option for this team. I don't think he's as good as what he thinks he is or what some people think he is. And he has gone missing, and he consistently does it at this time of the year. There's a real opportunity for him to stand up. He has played fantastically against Charlotte in the past with a 52-point average the last 3 times that these two teams have met. But he's got to really pull his finger out. By the way he's playing, he's probably got 2 fingers up there, to be honest. He needs to change that. He needs to get those fingers out, wash them off, get him on the ball, get to the line, be aggressive, and do what he needs to do. I do have issues with his attitude, and this is a good opportunity for him to do it. Now, I have zero trust. I have zero faith in him being able to achieve this, but I think that he has good GPP upside, especially at 89 on FanDuel. At 93 on DraftKings, I'll probably let that slide, and I don't think I'd be overly interested in having a crack at that. At 52 for Mick Kidd-Gilchrist, that is too high with the spectre of Frank Kaminsky looming. What a sentence that is. I didn't think I'd say that this season. Well, Marco Bellinelli has no intrigue to me. Let's talk about the power forwards, and it starts and ends on the Bulls side with Bob Portis. He's at $4,000, and I just don't think that's interesting. Marvin Williams, absolutely killing it. He's at 43-point average over his last 3, and the salary has been adjusted accordingly. He is now at 6,500, but with Frank potentially back, I don't think I want anything to do with that at 6,500. Now, Frank is out. You have to have a look, but it just feels too high. Now, if Frank is out on DraftKings with Marv at 5,900, I'm all for that. He's putting up big numbers, and at 5,900, I have a fairly high degree of confidence that Marvin can get to that. Now, last season, when I said I had high degree of confidence in Marvin Williams, I believe he came out and scored 1 point in a playoff game, so take that for what it's worth. But at 5,900, if Kaminsky is out, then Marv does become an option. In my opinion, as for Frank, he's at $6,000. There's no way that I would want to use that straight up. At center, there's a few options here. We've got Robin Lopez, obviously, at 4,600. I don't have trust in his floor, and I don't have trust that he has a high ceiling, so therefore, he's not a play to me. While Cody Zeller at 5,000, again, Frank is going to impact that. If you want to go minimum, and knowing that any sort of shit can happen with Chicago, Joffrey Laverne is a $3,000 player. He had that one good game where he scored 24 points. Yeah, cool, and that banished Mirotic from the rotation. He then had 5 today, so he hasn't been awesome. I think that's fair to say. But at $3,000, he can get 23. He can get 25. And one of the golden rules that I always talk about is who's in front of him. Are they any good? And the answer is no. So if he comes in there, if Bob struggles, if Laverne plays well when he comes in, then 30 minutes and even 30 points is not completely out of the discussion for Joff. Just if you're putting in a single entry GPP, he wouldn't be the guy that would be in it. Chris Felicia, I want him to get more minutes. I just don't think that it's happening because it doesn't matter what I want. Let's move on to the next game. We are going to talk Dallas. They are traveling to Toronto. The Raptors are favored by 4, and the total is a piss poor 197.5. That should scare the shit out of you from a DFS point of view. That is so low. Now, it doesn't always happen that way, but in general, Vegas makes a lot of money for a certain reason because they can get these over-unders pretty spot on. So when you look at this, or you look at Lakers Denver at 231, you're talking about 35-point difference. And that is big. 35 points is a lot. Not only is that 35 points, so that's 17 possessions maybe, then you factor in, that's 17 extra possessions if they hit every shot. If they miss shots, then you're talking about 30 extra possessions, 35 extra possessions. It's a lot for more assists, steals, blocks, rebounds. All this stuff, it's a big difference, and that is a huge discrepancy. So this match is not ideal. A couple of things we need to pay attention to. Will Damari Carroll be ready to go? He's missed the last game with an ankle issue. Missed one, played one, missed one. Will he be back? Nerlens Noel. I don't think Nerlens plays. He's missed the last two with a sore knee. I don't think that he goes in this one. And if he doesn't go, it doesn't mean that we want Dwight Powell. It doesn't mean that we want Salah Mejri. It just means that we don't want Nerlens. In fact, I don't even think we want Nerlens even if he does play in a bench role. Damari Carroll is the interesting one because if he is out, we'd want to find out who is starting because PJ Tucker started one game and Norm Powell started the other. If we're going to get Norm Powell 30 minutes, then I like Norm. I don't like PJ in any sort of sense. But in the last game, we saw 35 minutes out of Powell and we saw 14 out of PJ Tucker. So that probably feels like an unrealistic split. So even if they say Norm starts, maybe he's only a 28 or 30 minute guy and PJ plays 27, 28 himself. And that could limit what Powell can do. Let's talk about the point guards now. In this matchup, Corey Joseph is his 4,900. A pretty disgustingly bad game in the last one, 9 points. But the game before that, 36. So where do we sit? The fact that this is such a negative matchup in terms of overall pace and spread, or not spread, or overall pace at 4,900, I'm not feeling all that good about Corey Joseph. At 5,000 on DraftKings, the same. I don't feel like he is a lock to break value there. Yogi Ferrell is at 5,100, and Yogi's been putting up some nice seasonal categorical numbers, but they're not great. They're not great for 5,100, so I'll pass on that. Thanks, Yogi. Any other point guards that we need to talk about? Delon Wright played well in the last game, but I think that's a little fluky. Maybe if Damari is out, you can have a look at Delon, but I probably wouldn't. And JJ Barea and Devin Harris, probably not the right spot to use them. At shooting guard, Wes Matthews is at 5,100. He is doing exactly sweet FA. His highest score in the last 5 has been 23 points, and that doesn't even cut it at 5,100. So I think that Wes can be left alone, especially in a low-tempo game. DeMar DeRozan has not been good. 34-point average over the last 5, and that's fine. That's fine, but at 9,400, it's not. And he hasn't been the same DeMar DeRozan we've seen. Now, over on DraftKings, his price is much lower. It's slashed, 8,400. I like DeMar at 8,400 here on DraftKings. He clearly has 50-point upside, and I don't think he's going to be getting the 26 that he had in the last game. I think that an improvement definitely is on the track. At 9,400 on FanDuel, I don't feel that keen about it. Norm's at 3,900, so we know the story. If he starts, we can go with him. While Seth Curry is at 5,900. Seth had 9 points in the last game, and Seth's been playing fantastically, but he's one of those players that the box score looks really sexy because, shit, Seth Curry had 18 points. That's cool. 2 rebounds, 1 assist. And it doesn't necessarily it's very Dion Waiters-y. It doesn't really translate that well to DFS. It's fine, but he's still averaging just 25 over the last 5. And at 5,900, I'm sorry, but 25 doesn't get it done. His highest score is just 35, so he doesn't really have... You're not going to see many, and you might, but you won't see many 39 and 8 games with 3 steals from Seth. I just don't think you'll see many of those sort of performances. And that limits what he can do, and that makes that salary, to me, probably seem just a little bit high. And at 65 on DraftKings, I would say that's definitely too high. Small forward. This is where the unknown is for Toronto. Damari's at 4,200. I wouldn't have an issue with taking a flyer on Damari if he plays. He's coming off a 33-point game where he did a lot of defensive stuff in the last one. I definitely wouldn't use him for cash, but I would consider him. And at 37 on DraftKings, the same story. PJ Tucker, no in any sort of circumstance. While the pencil Harrison Barnes just continually 400 too high. Continually. He's at 64 on DraftKings. That's probably more than that too high. It's probably 600, 700 too high. And you just barely, you get one in 6 times that he'll even get to 5x value. It's too high. The pencil over on FanDuel at 61. Again, in his last 7 games, he's reached value in 2 of them. I don't even think his ceiling is high enough to consider him a GPP guy. His highest score is 32. And again, the matchup is not ideal. And he has struggled in the past against Toronto. No, thank you, Harrison. Thank you for your time. At power forward, Serge Ibaka at 6,400. His numbers have been declining. He is averaging 24 over the last 3. And again, the matchup's not good. We will pass on Serge. On DraftKings at 5,900, it looks a little bit more impressive. But still, I reckon we can get different players in different spots. 6,200 for Dirk. His numbers have actually been rising, but I'm not really feeling him in this one here. Pat, no thanks. At center, Jonas Valanciunas at 5,500. I don't think that this is a good matchup for Jonas. He had those couple of big 30-minute games, but if he's matching up against Dirk, Dwayne Casey's going to go, man, can you just sit your ass down? That's going to be the concern. So no thank you for Valanciunas in this one. Nerlens Noel, love him. 6,200 for a guy that might play 22 minutes on the bench. Unless they say you're starting, then I will leave Nerlens for somebody else. All right, let's move on to the next game. Minnesota. They take on the Washington Wizards at home. The Wolves are favoured by 1. The total is 214.5. This is going to be key. The Wizards are obviously on a long road trip where they've pulled out some miraculous last-second victories, overtime comebacks, and you've been on the road for a while. The Timberwolves are playing pretty well themselves. So it's going to be an interesting battle, and that's why the Wolves are favoured. It's definitely got that long road trip letdown situation happening here for Washington. So it is something we need to pay attention to for some of their players. Let's talk about the point guards, of course. We begin and we end. Or no, we don't. We don't end because there's a couple of good point guards here. But John Wall is at 10,700. Now, Johnny has been putting up good numbers, but this is not the spot to put up good numbers. Against Rick Rubio, we have seen point guards relatively disappear recently. John's been pretty good, averaging almost 50 his last 3 games and 49 over his last 5. But at 10,700, I need 55, John. And I'm just not sure that that's going to happen on a long road trip matching up against Ravishing. As for Ravishing at 7,200, I think it feels too high. I like what John Wall does defensively. I love what Rubio does, but 7,200 is not in my zone that I'll be interested. At 6,800 on DraftKings, there's a little bit to see there, and I definitely think that you can use Rubio at 6,800 on DraftKings. Even as a cash play. In fact, his last 6 games, he has reached 5x every single one of those games. So there is definitely a level of consistency there with Rick at 6,800. A weird game in the last one where he had 22 points. I wouldn't be expecting that, but double-digit assists is clearly in play, steals, rebounds, all that sort of stuff. So Rick at 6,800 on DraftKings has some appeal. The backups, Brandon Jennings, Tyus Jones, Chris Dunn. At shooting guard, Braddles Beal is now at $8,000, and that's because he's been killing it. But that's getting up there to be probably the price where you want to say no. At 76 on DraftKings, I would say maybe. But I think the fatigue factor could be real. I think it could be a real letdown scenario, and I'm not really feeling Brad Beal at that increased salary. Brandon Rush plays a lot of minutes, but doesn't do a lot in terms of scoring. We go. Andrew Wiggins, 7,300. He was bad in the last game. In fact, he's been bad recently, averaging under 25 points in his last 5. His highest score has been 29. He is well down. I think that Wiggins' ownership is going to be low. I think he got a real chance to get him as a GPP option if the shots finally fall. I think this is a chance for Wiggo to drop 40, and I wouldn't say it's a guarantee, so I wouldn't use it in cash, but I do think it's pretty good in GPPs on both sides at 73 and 7,100. Definitely has some upside after a real string of stinkers. He could turn it around. Shabazz Muhammad's at minimum. I don't really see much there. Well, Otto Porter getting it together. Way more shots for Otto recently. 36-point average over his last 3, but still at 6,200. I'm not sure where the upside is. 64 on DraftKings as well. Probably just a little bit too high. Don't hate it, but I don't see the upside. Bojan Bogdanovic is all upside. That's all he is. He's got no reliability, no good floor. In fact, look at his last 5 games. 40 points, 12 points. He's averaging just 17 over the last 3. The shot will come back and he'll have a big night, but it's just not going to be regular. And it's sure as shit not going to be reliable. Where are we? Power forwards. Bjelica, 4,200. Now, the minutes have been up for Nemanja. He played 32 in the last game, but doesn't mean he puts up big scores. He had under 20 points. So 4,200, even if he gets the 30-plus minutes, he's no guarantee. Now, this is a great matchup, so maybe it works in his favor, but I wouldn't be counting on it. It means I just won't want to use Gorgie Dieng. Now, Dieng, though, in a GPP on the flip side, with the way that 4 out of the last 5 games, 4 out of the last 6 games, he's been in the low 20s in minutes. So if we see a situation where Bjelica gets only 18 minutes and we get another one of those 37-minute 12 and 10 games with 2 steals, 2 blocks from Gorgie, then at 5,300 you can differentiate yourself that way, and he's down to 5,000 on DraftKings. So there's definitely some GPP upside for Gorgie Dieng. For the centers, Karl Anthony Towns at 10,500. He feels rock solid. I haven't felt him, but I'm sure he is rock solid. He's a professional athlete. He is at 10,500. He's at 10.6 on DraftKings. he's fine. He's the big money center I think you want to go for. The one you don't want to go for is Marcin Gortat. Are we going to get 34-minute Gortat? Or are we going to get 21-minute Gortat? We got 34 in the last game on the second night of a back-to-back. And I think that really impacted what Jan Mahinmi was able to do and therefore enabled Gortat to get stuck into it. He is at 5,700. Marcin, I'll leave him. Mahinmi at 3,600. I'm just not feeling that at this point either. So I think both those guys can be left alone. All right, next game. Where are we? We've got Milwaukee and Memphis. This could be not nice. The Grizzlies are favored by 4 and the total is 201.5. And I say it could be not nice because the spread is so low. The Grizzlies have been a disgusting mess. And Jason Kidd's rotation, who knows what the hell's going on with that. We don't know if Mirza Teletovic will play. He's missed the last 2 with hamstring issues. Same as Malcolm Brogdon, who's had back problems for the last 2. We don't know if either of those guys will play. If Brogdon is out, that means it's time to unleash Rashad Vaughn. And by unleash, I mean he'll score about 8 points. If Teletovic is out, then the minutes go a little bit more concentrated towards Greggy Munro, so that helps him in that sort of a situation. With Memphis, David Fizdale, apart from telling us all to kiss his ass, he could come out and change his lineup again, and it looks like he might do that, and he's probably just going to revert back to what he had before, bringing Tone Allen in over Jim Ennis. In the end, it just has absolutely zero impact on what happens for DFS. Let's talk point guards. Mick Conley's at 7,600. His numbers have been okay, but against the Bucks he has struggled, as have so many point guards. I don't feel great about him at $7,600. Conley's at 78 on DraftKings, the exact same story. Now for Brogo at 48, if he happens to play, I don't like it. It's against the Grizzlies. Will it be 29 Brogo? Will it be 22-minute Brogo? Will it be Jason Kidd bringing Fat Lever into play in his place? Like, who knows what's going to happen with those rotations. So I don't like Brogo, and I definitely don't like Matty Dellavedova at 3,800. Yes, he gets some minutes, but he does not turn them into anything that's worth using it for our purposes here. At shooting guards, Giannis, not shooting guards, he just plays one shooting guard position. 10,700 for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Yeah, fine. If you want to spend up at small forward, it's there. He only had 35 in the last game. He has struggled a bit with Memphis in his career, some of that coming last season, of course. So it's hard to get a full judge on that. But even his recent numbers with a 48-point average across the last 5, I don't love it. I'd probably look at him more as a GPP guy. If you want to flick him to DraftKings, though, he's at under 10,000, 9,800, and I like that. That's more cash. That's got some GPP upside there as well. He's got a 50-point average over his last 5, so I do like using Yanni over on DraftKings, not so much on FanDuel. Tone Allen, I don't care if he starts. We can leave that alone. At small forward, Chrissy Middleton's at 6,500. Love Chris, but that's too high. He can easily do it, but I just don't think he's quite at that level to be relied upon to do it at that price. 63 on DraftKings, a little bit more interesting, but still, I feel it's a little bit too high. Tone Snell. Tone Snell's been consistently good. I don't think it can last, but he's been consistently good. He's at 4,300 on FanDuel. He's at 4,000 on DraftKings, and he's got a DraftKings average of 25 over his last 5 games. The Tone Allen matchup could be a problem, and that's something I'd probably leave Snelly alone for. But in a GPP, we've seen this guy unbelievably get 35 points in a game. So, there's upside there for Tone. Don't exclude him from your player pool. Do exclude Chandler Parsons. Yes, he's a minimum salary player who has got a somewhat positive matchup, who is starting and playing 23 to 24 minutes a night. He's averaging 12 points in those 23 minutes. So, yeah, that's a no from me, Chandler. I like him. It's just been one of the weirdest seasons in recent memory from a player, in my opinion. Jim Ennis, terrible. Mirza Teletovic, no thanks. At power forward, Jermichael Green had a monster in the last game, 34 points. If you picked him up at 34 points and got 34 points at $4,000, you're loving it. The problem is it just doesn't happen for him all that much. But that price is very, very nice at $4,000, and I would include him in the GPP situation because he does have these random games. He also has the game where he goes 6-2 with 1 assist, and you go, thanks for nothing. Not that he gives a shit again what he does for your fantasy team. 4,300 for Jermichael on DraftKings. Again, less interested, but still there is some upside. I don't really like Zach Randolph. He is too highly priced at 5,900, and Johnny Henson, who has been getting some consistent minutes, but he's at 4,200. So 4,200 to me is basically break-even point. And yeah, if it was at 3,500, I'd go, yeah, cool, let's go, John. Let's go for it. On DraftKings, he's at 3,300. So yeah, let's go for it. Let's take a punt on him as a GPP at 3,300. You give me 23 points at 3,300. That's working. It's definitely working. It looks really, really good. And Jason Kidd could just completely screw that. Can completely come in and put his dick in the dip and ruin a perfectly good evening. That's what can happen. He might be in there. Look, he might play 27 minutes and just get 30 points. That can easily happen. So I like him at 3,300. I definitely don't want to use it in cash, though. There's no reliability in that. Speaking of no reliability, Greggy Munro at 5,500 easily can exceed that, but you need 30 plus minutes, and we just don't know whether he's going to get that. And I'm not sure he has enough upside at those salaries, 62 on FanDuel, to make that sort of move a reality. Oh, I didn't talk about Marc Gasol. I think he's too high on FanDuel as per usual. 73 on DraftKings, though I like it. It is a great matchup for him. He's been a little bit down in the last couple of games, but at 7,300, all for it with Marc Gasol. Let's move on to the... Can we talk about Marc Gasol's nickname? Big Spain. It needs to go. It's not a good nickname. I don't know what we're going to call him, but that's not a good nickname. Atlanta and the San Antonio Spurs. Kawhi Leonard has been upgraded to questionable. So there's a good chance that he plays. We've got DeJounte Murray out, LaMarcus Aldridge out, Tone Parker out. But Kawhi, he could be in. So that is something we need to pay attention to. Now, if Kawhi is out, it's going to be Kyle Anderson and John Simmons. Mostly Anderson, I would believe, that gets that bump. And he would be a player that you would absolutely be looking at if Kawhi plays, and you might not even see Anderson on the court at all. Let's start with the point guards. Pat Mills, $4,000. Well, there's no other point guard aside from Bryn Forbes on the roster. And yes, Pat only played 21 minutes in the last game, but that was a Warriors game where they were smashing them. So he still scored 30 in that game. I think you're going to have to see it getting up to close to 30 minutes from Pat, and at $4,000, there's very, very unlikely to be a better option. At 44 on DraftKings, yes, it's higher, but still some pretty good value there for Pat Mills. Dennis Schroeder is at 7,100, has been really, really good. Consistently averaging, or not just averaging, 37 points over his last 5, and at 7,100, that obviously works. The Spurs defense is a concern, but with Aldridge out, with Parker out, with potentially Kawhi out, then that defense is not exactly the same. So I don't hate Schroeder. I don't love him, but I do think that he can be used, and some of the matchup stats don't necessarily make sense because the Spurs are missing a lot of those players. 6,100 on DraftKings makes it really, really interesting for me. Jose Calderon has taken over as the backup in Atlanta, but that's no interest to us. Dan Green is at 3,800. Yes, there's no Aldridge. Yes, there's no Parker. Yes, there might be no Kawhi. It doesn't seem to impact Danny Green because he still does nothing. 14 points in the last game against the Warriors, averaging 15.5 over his last 5. Yes, he's at 3,800. Normally, I'd say, you know what? Maybe you want to take a punt on Green. He could go big. I don't know when the hell was the last time that Danny Green actually did something big. I don't know when the last time he came out and had one of those Richie Benos or had, a 3-3-3 with 15 points and five triples or something. Like, when's the last time he's done anything like that? It's weird. I do like Manu. He will work as a point guard as well. He is at 3,900. He's averaging, at the moment, 25 points in 22 minutes over his last 3 contests. I like that about Manu. 35 on DraftKings. He will handle the ball. He can get 5, 6. Shit, he could get 7 assists. And I think that's a real viable option to use Ginobili. Timmy Hardaway went back to the bench in the last game. I don't know if he'll move back into the starting lineup. He stunk. He had 15 points in 21 minutes. He's at 5,500. I don't mind him. I don't like him for cash really, but I do like him for GPPs on both sites. Small forwards. Kawhi, of course, 9,300. If he plays, love it. If he doesn't, then probably don't put him in a lineup. But we don't know at this point where he's coming from. Yeah, John Simmons is minimum salary. He does look appealing if Kawhi happens to sit. I'd want to hear what they're doing with the starting lineup. I think they would go back to Kyle Anderson, but you could absolutely hedge that and put Simmons in a GPP as well as Anderson, and they both work. I do prefer Kyle, though. Kent Bazemore is terrible. Tarbo's at 3,800. I don't see any interest in either of those guys. Taurean Prince had a big game in the last one. I think we can just write that off. A very, very weird performance in that last game by the entire team. Dave Lee is at 4,700 as a power forward. Lee had 21 points in 18 minutes against the Warriors. I feel pretty confident about Lee being able to exceed 25 points in this game. Really like it. At 5,000 on DraftKings, they've preemptively bumped him, but I don't think that it's a complete write-off. And as I talked about on yesterday's show, what we've seen this season, Aldridge misses, Lee takes the minutes. they don't really go with Powell and Deadman combinations. We see Lee step up and play 26 to maybe even 30 minutes in place of LaMarcus, and that should enable him to exceed. Now, it's not 100% guaranteed because Pop in the last game actually did play a little bit of Powell and Deadman, but it just hadn't happened at all in the season prior to that. And I think Lee-Deadman combos and Lee-Gasol combos will be more likely than Powell-Deadman combos. Paulie Millsap is at 7,800. Yeah, not a great matchup here against the Spurs, but again, it's not the same Spurs. And it's 6,900 for Paul Millsap on DraftKings. I think you have to love that. That's a really good price. Not so much on FanDuel at 78, but I love it on DraftKings. Ersan Ilyasova at 4,700. Yeah, probably not. Sorry, Ersan. Dwight Howard missed the last game due to rest. He should be back. He's a $7,000 player. I just don't see the upside in using Dwight here, to be honest. Deadman and Powell, 38 for Deadman. I think he's a GPP target. I also think Powell is a GPP target at 5,700. I think Powell can be a real dominant force in this one if the game stays even relatively close. He's had a great history against Atlanta as a member of Chicago. I think he's got a good chance, and at sub 6,000, he could easily breach the 30-point barrier. He could go to 35 or so. So I think that he is definitely worth a look. All right, we are moving on to the next game now. The Los Angeles Clippers and the Utah Jazz. No spread currently released for this one. We've got some news on the Jazz injuries. Derek Favors is out. He will be out for the next 3 games at least, and he will be reevaluated later in the week. He's suffering a bone bruise on his knee. I think that's the second time he's had that so far this season. The first one kept him out for like 2 to 3 weeks. So you'd have to assume, and if you're playing in seasonal leagues, get rid of him. You just move on. Joe Johnson started the last game without Derek. Now, whether they do that, whether they play Gordon Hayward at the 4 more, whether they go Boris Diaw, that's obviously still up in the air. I think that they're going to see more Joe Johnson there. Rudy Gobert is questionable with his issue, which is a leg soreness. If he is out, then Jeff Withey will start, and we'll see some more Diaw there also. And Shelvin Mack is also out. So they're the injuries we're talking about here. Let's talk point guards. Where are we? Georgie Hill, 6,100 for George. Chris Paul defense. Uncertainty about what George brings. Yeah, not. Now you can't really look into anything that Utah did last game because it was a smashing. But you know, I'm not really feeling George at that price. As for Chrissy Paul at 8,700, and this isn't a great spot for him. It's going to be a low total game. The Jazz keep it tight. Defensively, they're good. 8,700 just feels a little bit... Now, he could easily get to 40, Chris Paul, but 8,700 just feels like it's a little bit high. At 8,200 on DraftKings, I'm a little bit more behind it. I'm not totally there, though. Austin Rivers, Ray Felton. Shooting guard, Rocket Hood at 4,500 for Rod. It definitely wasn't great in the last game. It's had a couple of big ones. GPPs only. Same for Jamal Crawford and JJ Redick, but I have very little faith, especially in Redick, as being able to actually pay off and become a good GPP option. Alec Burks also had a good game in the last one, but that was weird circumstances. That small forward, Joe Johnson's at 3,600. I really do like Joe in this spot. He really could exceed 20. He could get 25 points if he gets the start. There's obviously no cash guarantee or reliability there, but I do like this spot for Joe Johnson if they decide to go back to starting him without Derek Favors. Well, Gordo Hayward at 7,800. His numbers have been a little bit on the decline, averaging under 30 over his last 5, and that's not what you want at 7,800. This matchup's probably not ideal with Luke Marmute maybe sticking to him, so I think that you can do better than a $7,800 priced Gordon Hayward. He's at 74 on DraftKings, which looks alright, and I would be okay looking at that as a GPP sort of a situation. Obviously, we're not going to be using Marmute or probably even Joe Ingles. Power forwards, Mo Spates, minimum salary, putting up 15 a game in the last 3. Yeah, I don't really see it though. Blakey Griffin is the big name, of course. 9,100. He has done fantastically against Utah recently, averaging 47.5 points. No Derek Favors, so that opens things up a little bit for Blake. I like Blake here. I think this is a really good GPP spot, especially on DraftKings at 8,300. You've got definite 50-point upside here for Blake, so I do really like him over there, especially on the DraftKings site. The centers, Gobert, if he plays at 7,800, I do really like that. DeAndre has yielded some pretty good numbers to opposition centers recently, so at 7,800 for Rudy, I think that you're looking at a 40-pointer here. he's averaging 46 over his last 3, a good spot. As for DeAndre Jordan, well, he gets Gobert, so that's not ideal. Now, if he doesn't get Gobert at 7,400, I think it's a good idea to use DeAndre Jordan. But if he does have Gobert, then it's a risky one. So that means you're playing these guys, or playing him in cash is not a good idea. At 6,500 for DeAndre on DraftKings, it gains a lot more interest, and it actually gains some cash interest. Not a huge deal, but he becomes an option over there without being a write-off, as I think that he is on FanDuel at that price for cash games. All right, let's move on to Orlando and Sacramento. Spread is even. The total is 207 points for this game, so pretty low sort of a total. Jody Meeks might be back. He's missed a little bit of time with that fractured thumb. I don't think he's going to have too much of an impact on the rotation, though. Let's talk point guards. Lord Alfred Payton is at $6,900, has been putting up pretty rock-solid numbers. Not a great one for him in the last one, but it wasn't a great one for Orlando in general. He is at $6,900. Absolutely think he's worth a GPP look. He could easily get you 50, and he's done it multiple times this season. So I think that Alfred is definitely someone that I would look into. I don't feel that strongly about him on DraftKings at 7,000, but I do like him at FanDuel. The Kings point guards, who knows? Darren Collison played just 24 minutes in the last game. He's at 5,400. This matchup is really good. I would look at Collison as a GPP guy. Ty Lawson has disappeared off the face of the earth. I would look at Collison as a GPP guy, especially given the brilliance of this matchup. Evan Fournier at 55 as a shooting guard. I like that. I don't think there's much tournament upside, but I feel okay about him for cash. Well, Bud Hield has been playing very well. Shooting the ball well, but like the players that I talked about earlier when, like Seth Curry, like they score efficiently, but they don't do anything else in the other areas, and that limits what they can do DFS-wise. So Bud's at 4,200. Had a great game in the last one. It was just 27 points. So it wasn't a fantastic return. It was still good. Don't get me wrong. And I think he's a GPP sort of a guy, as is Tyreek Evans at 5,900, who we know has got one of the best per minute production levels of all these shooting guards on this team. Now, the rest of the shooting guards, Aaron Aflalo, Garrett Temple, really hard to consider using those players. Terrence Ross at 4,200 has been disgustingly bad, but he can be disgustingly good as well. So I think he's a great GPP contrarian play. Yeah, he's averaging 17 over the last 5. But in those last 5, one of those games was 32 points. You get that 32-pointer, then at 4,200, that's a really, really good start to a lineup. So I like Terry over there. At 5,000 on DraftKings, I'm not as keen. There are literally no small forwards on the Kings roster. At power forward, Will Cauley-Steins at 5,500. I think there's value in that, especially with this matchup. Yes, he is as up and down as they come, but you get that 40-pointer out of Will, and it's a really good return. At 5,000 on DraftKings, I actually think that even in cash at 5,000, I have a fair degree of confidence of him reaching that minimum threshold, because his minutes are fairly consistent, and that's something that you can't say for the majority of people on this Sacramento team. Aaron Gordon's at 5,600, maybe just a little bit high, but I definitely wouldn't be writing that off. He has value there, and at 58 on DraftKings, I think that's probably a little high. I don't think we need to worry too much about Scal or Anthony Tolliver. At center, Costa Koufos is at 4,400, has been relatively solid. It's a good matchup. I don't feel strongly about Koufos at that price, but at 3,900 on DraftKings, I think that he's got 7x upside. He's got 8x upside at that sort of a salary. We've seen it multiple times. Again, we can't trust it because we don't know if he's going to play 28 minutes or 18 minutes. But I definitely think there's a good opportunity there for Costa to put up some good numbers. As for Nikola Vucevic, he is at 7,500. He put up 39 in his first game back. I just feel like it's a little bit high. I like it at 69 on DraftKings, and I would use him there. I would consider him cash and GPP. I just wouldn't do it necessarily on FanDuel. All right, let's get into this last game of the night. The Los Angeles Lakers and the Denver Nuggets. This is the big spread. 11.5 to Denver, but 231 as the total. Jameer Nelson and Wilson Chandler are both listed as questionable, while Ken Fareed is doubtful. So there's a lot that needs to be cleared up. And Denver, this information normally doesn't come out before lock, so it is curious. The Blue Arrow is going to be a great GPP option. He's been putting up numbers anyway, but if Jameer sits, then it's 30 minutes of Jamal Murray, and that's going to be useful, but you're not going to know that. So using that in cash is definitely taking a risk that I probably don't want to do. If Wilson Chandler misses, then we're going to have some more One-Show. Some more Darrell Arthur. Now, do they become great GPP options? Definitely not as good as the Blue Arrow, but they do become options nonetheless, and they'd be players at pretty much, or not pretty much, at minimum salary, then that they come into play if we hear that Wilson Chandler's out with this groin issue that he is dealing with. Let's look at the point guards. I like D'Angelo Russell at 6,700. Great matchup for him against Denver. Yep, love it, love it. Jordy Clarkson at 5,200. Love it as well. A monster from him, obviously, today. He's been putting up solid numbers. A really good spot for Jordy in this one as well. While Jameer Nelson, I wouldn't be using him regardless. And the Blue Arrow is a very, very good GPP option. Shit, you could even consider him cash because in the last 3 games, he's averaging 21 points in only 20 minutes. At 3,800, if you get 21 points, you win. And then if he starts and gets 30 minutes, then you're talking maybe 30 points. And it's a huge, huge bump. So I wouldn't be totally against using him in cash. There's obviously a degree of risk associated with that. Gaz Harris at 5,600 as a shooting guard. Gaz just dropped a casual 36 in the last game. He's been a little bit up and down in some of his performances, not terribly, but I still like him at that sort of a price. I don't think that's too exorbitant. 58 for him on DraftKings has a little bit of value. Fart and Will Barton well down, and Uncle P out of the rotation now. David Nwaba, no, don't care that he's starting. Brandon Ingram at 4,000. I continue to like that on FanDuel. That's a really good price. His price at 5,100 on DraftKings is not quite there, but you know what? If he's going to do what he did today with the steals and blocks, then he maintains value at 51. I just don't think that it's the strongest situation to use him. As for the Rooster, much like the Pencil, along with having great nicknames, they just continually seem $400 to $500 overpriced. So I don't think that Danilo Gallinari is really worth too much of a look. At 6,200 on DraftKings, maybe, but I just don't really see the upside at that sort of a salary. At power forward, Julius Randle is continually priced high as well, 6,500, but he's putting up some good numbers. I don't have an issue with using him actually in this sort of a matchup. I think it's a good spot for Julius. At 75 on DraftKings, I reckon I'll let that one slide. Larry Nance at 42, another big game from Nancy today. Yeah, still don't really get into it. At 4,000 on DraftKings, yeah, there's GPP upside for Nance, and especially if they go small ball down the end, that could work. But Nance on Jokic, I'm not really sure how that's going to play out. Now, speaking of Jokic, he's a $10,000 player. You have to love this matchup. This is a really good one for him. He's at 10-4 on DraftKings. Like Jokic in cash, like him in GPPs. Zubats is at $3,700. Yes, he played just the 19 minutes today. Still had 4 blocks, though. And I think at $3,700, this is a great situation for him. I'm not sure they'll be able to go small ball really too often here. Yeah, really like Zubats. He's at 39 on DraftKings. Love it. Mason Plumlee in 21 minutes in the last game put up 34 points, but at $5,700, I don't really think that it's the best use of resources. All right, let's before we get to the picks of the day, let's see, has anyone chimed in with any questions before we get into the picks of the day? Load them up. Australian internet. I'm trying to do 2 things at once. It doesn't work out. All right, let's have a look. Joel says, what's my take on Jordan Crawford for this week? Yeah, I like him. Yep, I think he's going to get 20 plus minutes every night. He's going to shoot. He's going to score. He's going to hit threes. He's going to do nothing else, but he can do all those things. So if your team needs points, it needs threes, and your league is 12, or probably 14 teams, but maybe 12. You really desperately need points and threes. I don't see Crawford's role really going anywhere because they desperately need what he can bring. So I like that. I like that question, Joel. And yeah, he can be added, as weird as it sounds, to add a guy like Jordan Crawford. Let's talk picks of the day. On FanDuel, Pat Mills at 4,000, D'Angelo at 67, and Kemba at 84. Manu's at 39, Fournier at 55, and Yanni at 10.7. The small forwards, Kyle Anderson at 4,000, if Kawhi is out, of course. Wiggos at 73, and Jim Butler at 89. At power forward, Dave Lee, 47, Cauley Stein at 55, and Jokic at 10,000, and center Zubats at 37, Gobert at 78, and Townsy at 10.5. On DraftKings, Tyreek 54, and Kemba at 81. Kyle Anderson, 36, Timmy Hardaway, 51, and DeRozan at 84. For the small forwards, Davis Bertans at 3,000, Nick Batum at 72, and Cauley Stein at 5,000, Paulie Millsap, 69, and Blakey Griffin at 83. And the centers, Ivica Zubats, 39, Marc Gasol, 73, and Jokic at 10,400. For the Aussies on Moneyball, Corey Joseph, 45, Jordy Clarkson, 52, and Kemba at 87. Shooting guards, Manu, 35, Tyreek at 51. The small forwards, Kyle Anderson, 35, Otto Porter, 65, and Yanni at 10.5. Power forward, Dave Lee, 42, Aaron Gordon, 55, and Paulie Millsap, 81. And at center, Ivica Zubats at 35, Cauley Stein at 5,000, and Jokic at 9.7. On Draft Stars, Mills 6550, D'Angelo at 13950, and Chrissy Paul at 14850. For the shooting guards, Tone Snell at 5350, Timmy Hardaway 8550, and DeMar at 15050. Small forwards, Jezza Lamb at 5750, Gaz Harris at 9650, and Yanni at 18550. Power forwards, Dave Lee 7250, Will Cauley-Stein 9350, and Jokic at 199. In the centres, Ivica Zubats at 5850, Gobert at 138, and Marc Gasol 14,600. Again, congratulations to Tom Wills for being the winner of the review contest. I'll be in touch with you very soon, Tom, to sort out your prize. Thank you to everyone who entered into that contest, and feel free to continue to leave your reviews because it is great to get that sort of exposure for the show. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at redrock_bball. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Dwayne Wade.